Good evening, everyone. My name is Amy Cantwell, and for my current event, I chose the recent postponement of the sentencing portion of the Nikolas Cruz trial. Nikolas Cruz has pleaded guilty to 17 counts of murder and 17 counts of attempted murder. He faces the maximum sentence at the death penalty and the minimum sentence of life in prison without chance of parole. According to the Miami Herald, a Broward Circuit judge agreed to allow prosecutors and defense attorneys extra time to prepare for this trial. The Broward State Attorney's Office requested this extra time because of the amount of work that they still needed to do. This includes depositions of witnesses and mental health experts. Jurors in this case will be asked to consider mitigating factors such as tumultuous family life, a long history of mental health disorders, brain damage caused by his biological mother's drug and alcohol use during pregnancy, and claims that he was bullied by peers. I'm going to give a brief background on Nikolas Cruz and then discuss appropriate models we could use to help understand the cause of his behavior and how we as a society can use this information to appropriately guide his punishment. Nikolas Cruz was adopted by birth by Linda and Roger Cruz. The following year, his biological mother gave birth to another son, which the Cruz family also adopted. Nikolas has had many diagnoses in his lifetime. Starting at age 3, he was diagnosed with developmental delays. Later on, his diagnoses include ADHD, depression, emotional behavioral disability, and autism. DCF also noted in their records obsessive compulsive disorder and anger issues. Nikolas's home life with his adoptive parents seemed normal. Linda was a stay-at-home mom. She involved the kids in sports, in the church. Roger traveled for work, but when he was home, he was also very involved in the kids' lives. Unfortunately, when Nikolas was 6 years old, he was present when his father died of a massive heart attack. Nikolas's school life was even more tumultuous. In 8th grade, he was assigned to an emotional behavioral school. It was noted in documents that he was preoccupied with war, death, and killing. He also had a history of suspensions due to fighting. Nikolas desired to be in a normal school. He was granted this when he was allowed to enroll in Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. However, leading to the mass shooting, Nikolas was expelled. He had also made suicidal statements on social media, bought multiple guns, lost his mother to pneumonia, quit mental health treatment, and got kicked out of a neighbor's house. When assessing Nikolas Cruz, I first looked to the medical model. I find that the DSM-5 would be very appropriate in his treatment and evaluation. I feel that they should do a recent diagnosis also for the sentence hearing. I would additionally look at the new research in the field of neuroscience. Recently, we were assigned to watch a podcast called Using Brain Science to Understand the Terrible Teens. In this podcast, Dr. Jensen explains that the brain is the last organ of the body to develop. In particular, the prefrontal cortex and the frontal lobe are underdeveloped until the average of mid-20s. These parts of the brains are responsible for decision-making, impulse control, empathy, and judgment. Being underdeveloped until the mid-20s makes this population vulnerable to the effects of their environment. Then Dr. Steinberg explained that the limbic system, which is the reward center of the brain, is much more easily aroused during adolescence. He compared adolescence to a time when the accelerator is pressed down to the floor, but there's not yet a good brake system. I find neuroscience fascinating, especially when we're considering the function of behavior. Because Nikolas Cruz was an adolescent at the time he committed these crimes, it's imperative that we consider his brain develop on the effects of his behavior. We can also look to Erikson's theory of psychosocial development. Stage 6 is called intimacy versus isolation. During this stage, the adolescent is looking for intimacy and closeness in relationships. If this is not established, they face isolation. We can apply this to Nikolas Cruz. Right before the mass shooting, he admitted that he wanted a girlfriend. He also lost both of his parents, and he had a history of being bullied by his peers. I find it really intriguing that Nikolas Cruz chose Valentine's Day to commit this crime. I believe he was definitely reaching out, telling the world that he was lonely. Going back to the sentencing trial, I agree with the judge's decision to give both sides more time to prepare. I believe that there are many important factors for the jurors to consider before they make a decision. Originally, Cruz's defense attorneys offered a plea where he would plead guilty in exchange for taking the death sentence off the table, but the state attorney's office adamantly said no. They wanted the death penalty. As a professional in the field of social work, I cannot help but question if the death penalty is appropriate in this case. By taking into consideration Cruz's trauma history, mental health diagnosis, and the stage of development he was at the time of this crime, there's a clear picture that there's a multitude of factors that influence his behavior. Therefore, is it fair to sentence a young adult to death? This then makes me also question, where did we go wrong and what could have been done to prevent this tragedy? Who else do we hold accountable? Recently, the National Association of Social Workers has proposed Florida Bill HB 0893 in regards to residential treatment programs. This bill would authorize DCF to place children in therapeutic group homes without prior court approval. It requires DCF to appoint qualified evaluators for assessments and to provide a copy of these assessments within a specific time frame. My personal work as a juvenile probation officer has shown me that there is a huge need for residential treatment programs. I have worked with juveniles who suffer from severe mental health issues and are not afforded the appropriate treatment. Instead, they are put in the juvenile justice system where they are unsuccessful. Parents are frustrated. They are begging for help, and it is just so difficult to get appropriate services for these youth. So with that, I 100% support this bill and hope to see new, more appropriate options in the future for these families and these children. Thank you.